whatever it tells me. Like right now, it is the preseason watch list. It is the Audible live Cecil, Lammey, and Sigmund Bloom going through 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about, we talk about right here on the show. The AFC East up today, and of course on YouTube, we're doing this division all at once. On iTunes, we're going to split these up into individual episodes. So the Bills are up first, which means Josh Allen is up first, which means Bloom, we've got to talk about a developing quarterback, very exciting young quarterback, certainly a rusher, and certainly with some different weapons around him. We'll get to those weapons in a little bit, but how does all of this, and maturation that we're kind of projecting for Josh Allen, how does it come together for the young QB and for our audience? What does it mean for fantasy football?
Sure. Well, one of the things it means for fantasy football, very simply, is that Josh Allen, with the rushing upside he showed last year, and the offensive coordinator in Brian Daboll that let him be him, that let him do him. Kind of like what we saw from Colin Kaepernick at times, which is like, hey, if you don't see it or it doesn't feel comfortable, then pull it down, run, use what you got to keep the defense on their heels. It doesn't necessarily have to be passing. Now, in year two, how does it evolve? How does it evolve with Daboll and Josh Allen? How does it evolve with Josh Allen maybe having more accuracy and more of natural instincts on those short passes, taking the easy passes like Matt Waldman talks about, taking the easy solution, but also having some more weapons we'll talk about, and hopefully some improvement on the offensive line. And I think, Cecil, if we were going to forecast the Bills offense, and if they're going to be fantasy overachievers, starting with Josh Allen, and look, Josh Allen fits into yet another, this could be a right answer at quarterback. What is he? Quarterback 18, 19, 20 or something like that. And what was he down the stretch in the fantasy playoffs last year? Like top 5, top 6. I'm not saying he's going to be top
quarterback 22 right now.
22, right. And so obviously if you wait and you just start Josh Allen week 1 and see where it goes from there, then that's a fine strategy quarterback, because things should be better. And assuming that defenses, this is going to stay static, this offense. It's not going to be exactly what they saw last year, partially because of those additions, partially because of evolution and Daboll and Allen growing together. And they get the Jets week 1, so that's not a bad week 1 streamer matchup, but it's all about the offensive line. It's all about Bobby Johnson, who was the assistant to Dave Guglielmo. And see, this is the great thing about the clock ticking as we're recording these. Dave Guglielmo now to be featured in another AFC East preseason watch list as an offensive line coach. Those two oversaw the rebuilding of the Colts offensive line. And this is what the Bills have to accomplish this year under Bobby Johnson. It's finding a combination that works and having those guys gel. They have Mitch Morse coming over from Kansas City to give them a good cornerstone in the pivot. They have Deion Dawkins, who's developing as a left tackle. They need to find a combination that's going to work at guard and right tackle. And second round pick Cody Ford, a lot of people had in the first round, maybe even had in the top 10 or 15. So he could fit at guard. He could fit at right tackle. He loves Bobby Johnson. He said he wanted to come to Buffalo because of Bobby Johnson. So these are all good things. If this offensive line is good, if they find a combination that clicks and they're at least middle of the league offensive line wise, this could be fun.
Yeah, it could be fun and interesting. And those running back situation is going to be interesting for fantasy GMs, but that's in a little bit.
Yeah.
The backups behind Josh Allen, Matt Barkley, Tyree Jackson. I'm not saying he's Logan Thomas, but I just got a sense of Tyree Jackson at the Senior Bowl. Everyone's like, look at the size, look at the arm. And it's like flashbacks of Logan Thomas when, everyone was like, not everyone, but a lot of people are like, Logan Thomas can play QB. It's like, Tyree Jackson is big. Tyree Jackson is athletic. Tyree Jackson is raw as the day is long. But deep dynasty, certainly an interesting prospect.
Certainly for fantasy, too, because of that running ability. And if you watch Tyree Jackson at Buffalo, so that's kind of cool. I mean, I think he was rooming with Josh Allen, and some of their strengths and weaknesses overlap. I think that Allen has more of as a passer to offer than Jackson. Jackson reminds me more of late career Colin Kaepernick, where you just wanted to make 1-2 reads and then pull it down and run, and occasionally try to make something happen outside of the pocket. That's where he's at now, and I think that those league insider types would say he came out a year early. If Tyree Jackson was in school now and coming out next year, now it becomes more interesting. But the Bills get a hometown kid to develop. They got Matt Barkley, semi-functional, but Josh Allen's the hoss. I think he's one of the least likely guys to go down with an injury. So I doubt we'll be talking about the backup quarterback this year.
We will definitely be talking about this running back situation, and this is how it happens, right? We record NFC East last week, and then all of a sudden, like Corey Coleman, like all the boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom. There's all these dominoes. So again, don't know exactly when you're listening. We're recording on July 30th for this show, but like, I don't know if LaShawn McCoy is going to make the team. Big cap number, big savings if they get rid of him. Frank Gore's there. I love Devin Singletary. I've made no bones about it. Now, Singletary will not blow you away with the spark numbers or whatever. Like, he's not going to blow you away with the 40 time, but what he does have is certainly run after contact ability, over 1,000 yards rushing after contact last year at FAU. He's got balance. He's got vision. He's got nuance as a runner. And Bloomy knows how to create his own space. And for me, when I'm watching running backs, that's where the bell starts ringing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, watch this guy just manipulate space. He's not the fastest. He's not the strongest. He's very intent as a runner. And I dig that, man. Well, speaking of intent as a runner, there's Frank Gore. There is LaShawn McCoy. Let's just say he's going to stay, which he probably will. I hope he does. But Bloom, this is the migraine-inducing headache, pain in the ass, sorry, Joe, of the Bills' backfield when it comes to the fantasy lens.
And really what it spells out, the prescription is just don't take a Bills back unless it's Devin Singletary. But we can break this down. I think that LaShawn McCoy is going to stay with the team. He's a $6 million or so man. They keep talking about him like they still believe he can play. The decline is coming. It hasn't necessarily been steep, maybe slightly incremental coming into this year. But I think that they've seen him as kind of a foundation player in terms of tone setting, just like Frank Gore, the kind of player Frank Gore has been in previous stops. And that's excellent because you have Devin Singletary. This year can be kind of an incubator year from him. He's been getting a lot of first team snaps because there's no reason to give Frank Gore and LaShawn McCoy a lot of work in camp. But I think you're going to see some kind of a committee approach. I like the way you describe Singletary. I would say he has similar strengths to David Montgomery as a runner.
Very
He's
much
not going to blow you away with burst, not going to blow you away with ankle breaking moves or anything like that. But like you said, just understands how to create space, understands how to rub off of contact, to get through contact, yards through contact, like Matt Waldman would say. So Singletary, you can take him 15th round. I mean, he's not, even though he went in the 3rd round, along with Darrell Henderson, along with David Montgomery, along with Damian Harris, no redraft buzz at all. So you can take him and see what happens if LaShawn McCoy gets cut or LaShawn McCoy gets traded. Ching, ching. And otherwise, we wait. Maybe they turn the page to Singletary at some point during the season. The guy that we're not talking about, Cease, and I think it just remains somewhat of a mystery, is TJ Yeldon, who probably is on the outside looking in. He's on the bubble, and the bubble may burst. Maybe he's someone who ends up in Houston or somewhere else.
Tampa.
Sure. He's a decent all-around running back. What is he, 24, 25 years old? I've never watched TJ Yeldon and thought that guy's a slug. That guy doesn't even belong in the NFL. Yet the NFL isn't sure if he belongs in the NFL. Buffalo's not going to be sure if he belongs in Buffalo. It's clear that it's McCoy, as long as he makes the team or doesn't get traded, Gore, and Singletary. And then, I'm not sure about Yeldon.
Well, and Yeldon could at least be a pass catcher for you.
Right.
I mean, that has a ton of value. Maybe not as much as we think. We're still waiting. I don't think Theo Riddick signed yet, right, Bloom? Like, we're still waiting on that, like, as we record. But still, like, TJ Yeldon could be a fine receiving option out of the backfield and a better option than, Gore, Singletary, or McCoy. So we'll see. So let's talk about Sonoris Perry, Marcus Murphy. Looks like Christian Wade is there as well. I don't know if you want to bring up Patrick DeMarco here, the fullback, but like, some interesting names, deep dynasty, preseason watch list. I'll be paying attention.
Yeah, I think that Wade maybe was a former rugby player. Maybe they get that international player exemption.
Yep, you're right.
Sonoris Perry and Marcus Murphy, these are versatile backs. I think Murphy can contribute in the return game, which may help him get a spot over Yeldon. So, there's a reason these names keep coming up on the preseason watch list. It's because teams are always looking to see. I'm sure that you will cover this in detail. For the Broncos, teams are always looking for a way to save a roster spot. So being able to put on multiple hats, a good thing for running back.
A good thing for Josh Allen, and the fact they went out and tried to upgrade the wide receiver position. Bloom, I don't know how much exactly they did. Now, Cole Beasley's numbers, and listen, we're going to talk about Zay Jones, right? So, Bloom, I'll let you go on and on and on about Zay Jones. But the other guys, the new guys, are the interesting ones. And then also Robert Foster, interesting one as well. But anyways, maybe we should talk about this group as a whole, right? Because there's like so many facets. Cole Beasley's numbers should go down because it's a run-heavy team. I don't think Beasley's going to get as many targets or receptions as he did with the Cowboys, but he's there as the third guy. You bring in John Brown to be that deep ball guy, of course, take the top off the defense, run by everybody, raise his hand, and smoke will get open for Josh Allen. Okay, that's interesting. Zay Jones he's kind of a guy to me, like just a guy. Maybe he's more, and I'm totally wrong, but I'm never like totally blown away with Zay Jones. Kind of disappointing with, we're talking about the FBS all-time reception leader here. So guy can definitely cut a rug, but as a pro, not really doing it for me. Robert Foster does, though. Robert Foster does. And it's curious because he's the guy that kind of gets hurt the most, Bloom. So I'm sorry to toss four receivers at you, but it is kind of a cluster. You know what? Sorry, Joe, because of the addition of Brown, the addition of Beasley. Okay, Jones is their one, I guess. Robert Foster looked like he could be more. Now he's probably down the depth chart. It's kind of a mess here.
It is, and I think that's the right way to approach this this wide receiver core a week ago. And it's interesting because, as you pointed out, we record Cincinnati and then AJ Green gets hurt and all hell breaks. I mean, the Cincinnati episode would be completely different if we recorded it today. But one good thing is this Buffalo episode is not going to have to be different, because what we've seen in the first week of camp is one of our favorites. You get to see my face, you get to hear my voice. Over the course of the 13, 14 years we've been recording this show now, few players make me light up as much as John Brown when we talk about him. And I'm glad, Smokey baby, you got me singing the sweet refrain. Funkadelic, check it out. Or was it the P-Funk? I don't know what they record. The games that George Clinton played with the record industry is something we all need to emulate. Like, it was like whack-a-mole to the way that he was able to pull that off. Anyway, love John Brown. Love his game. And it was a cyst on his spine, I think, that was causing those problems when he couldn't stay healthy. It wasn't sickle cell. And now he's staying healthy. And remember, he was on pace for a 1,000-yard season with Joe Flacco last year in his first year with Flacco. So given the first year chemistry and all that stuff, hey, we saw Josh Allen. You might think that he's so bad, raw, you never know, the ball could go backwards. But he made week to week last year Zay Jones or Robert Foster relevant in fantasy leagues. Now he has someone in John Brown that is an excellent all-around receiver. The chemistry is already there. He can do what Robert Foster did as a deep receiver. He can run routes. He can get open in the short and intermediate range. He can add value after the catch. It's John Brown. I think we have clarity. We're going into camp. We didn't have clarity. We have clarity now. It's John Brown. 10th, 11th, 12th round of your draft. Yeah, call up Smokey.
Current ADP is 14th round, wide receiver 62.
Yeah, so it's easy. It's easy. Once you fill out, you get your favorite pet upside guys in the 8th, 9th, 10th round, then you're looking to Smokey. And we saw what Robert Foster could do. We saw what Zay Jones could do. John Brown, I don't want to besmirch the reputation of Foster or Zay Jones. They'll be lucky if they become as good of a receiver in their career as John Brown is right now. Now, this is still good for this offense. Overall, though, Zay Jones, he's a baffling evaluation for me, Cease, because he racked up those numbers, but his application in the NFL wasn't going to look at all like what they did with him in college. And then he put up these great measurables, and he's somewhere in between that. You're seeing him do some things, but he's also been inconsistent. He had that odd off-season incident last year. Seems like everything's leveled off. He's a top 3 receiver along with Cole Beasley, and Cole Beasley represents, again, getting Josh Allen to take that easy throw. The body blows, just 5, 6, 7 yards at a time. Those quick, easy routes that come open early in the play, the throws that should be easy, not always for Josh Allen. And then Robert Foster. Look, if John Brown gets hurt or Zay Jones gets hurt, we know what Robert Foster can do. And you mix him in some 4 wide sets or otherwise, having Robert Foster after what he did as a 4th receiver, it's looking excellent for this team. So a big weakness going into the year last year, we would have said Buffalo, bottom 3 wide receiver group. Now they're building around Josh Allen. It's fun to see.
Yeah, it is fun to see. And when you bring up Cole Beasley and those easy throws, I just go back to DJ Yeldon. Like, it's not much easier than that. Yeah. Unless you're Case Keenum and you can't see guys out of the backfield. Anyway, let's talk about the rest of the Bills wide receivers, which include Ray McLeod, Andre Roberts still kicking around. There's Isaiah McKenzie, Duke Williams. David Sills is interesting. We picked up as a free agent. Nick Easley, also a free agent this year. Victor Bolden Jr. It looks like Cam Phillips is still there too. So again, preseason watch list guys like
Sure.
David Stills are the ones that attract my attention the most, because some of the other players, McKenzie, Roberts, we've already seen them. We already know who they are.
Yeah, Roberts can help maybe win a game with special teams contributions. Ask the Jets. You had, I think there was some hype earlier. See, Duke Williams, CFL, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, there's some hype about him like earlier in the offseason cycle when we're not, I don't say we're bored, because I'm never bored by football, but we're looking for something to seize on there. Ray McLeod, really raw, coming out of Clemson, more of like a running back, wide receiver tweener. But with Sills, you have a guy with some size. You got a guy who was very productive, and we saw a lot of people's favorite receivers fall out of the draft this year. Greg Dortch, another one we'll talk about in the AFC East watch list. So Sills, absolutely, some people would have pounded the table for before the draft. They didn't have to pound the table because they were able to get him as an undrafted free agent in Buffalo.
Who's healthy?
No, nobody.
That's what reminds me when we go to Bills tight ends, because this entire offseason, you're like, okay, you go out, you get Tyler Kroft. All right. You draft Dawson Knox. Cool. And then like, Jason Kroom got hurt too, right? Blew him top of my head. Like, you had Kroft banged up, Kroom banged up. Okay, now Dawson Knox there as potentially the starter, drawing some comparisons to Kyle Rudolph. Of course, they pick him up out of Ole Miss at the end of the third round, basically. Like, all right, there's some skill there, some movement there with Dawson Knox, who seems to, have this opportunity now. Kroft would have been an interesting name, just like super deep dynasty crazy, just monitor stuff. But now it becomes Dawson Knox. So let's talk about those easy throws. Quarterback's favorite friend. Young QBs love the security blanket of a tight end.
So this group, not so interesting for fantasy right now, but it's fun to talk about these guys. Kroft, just a decent all-around tight end. Those guys get paid $6 million a year now in free agency, but when will we see him? A foot, some think a Jones fracture. So I don't know. We may probably, honestly, we'll see him on the PUP list and may not see him this year, or at least not until November, December. It did open the door for Dawson Knox, who at Ole Miss athletically really stands out. One of the top 2, 3, 4 tight ends in this class in terms of athleticism. Production, not so much, but look who he played with at Ole Miss, DK Metcalf and DeMarcus Lodge and AJ Brown. So that kind of makes sense, although he had trouble staying healthy. Again, having trouble staying healthy. Lee Smith, extra tackle. And doesn't it actually, I mean, why not Lee Smith getting a lot of snaps at tight end and helping this offensive line? And then you have your 3 wide sets. So maybe that is what it's pushing this team into. Jason Kroom, a former wide receiver at Tennessee, he's a little banged up. So yeah, at this point, truly, we're just looking for a healthy body.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's it for the Bills tight end. Yeah. Like, there's nothing really more to say about Lee Smith. He was huge, right?
Yeah,
he's really big. Okay, and then my mind keeps going back to TJ Yeldon. Like, okay, you're not really going to throw to the tight end. Beasley, fine, but couldn't use Yeldon.
Yeah.
Anyway, now I think we do have a record, Bloom. I'll have to go back and look. I think we might have a record for the shortest preseason watch list when we talked about, I think it was the Browns a few years ago. We've been doing this a while, as you said. Do the Dolphins beat that record for shortest preseason watch list? We'll get to that next. I almost spilled my purple drink. Not that purple drink. This poison. It's great. If you're a potential sponsor, it's awesome. All right, 3, 2, 1. Boy, the Dolphins aren't very interesting, Bloom. I got a buddy of mine who is a big Dolphins fan, Sean Gates. What's up, Sean? And he was talking to me last week. He's like, what do you think of my Dolphins? I'm like, you're tanking. It's like, look to next year. Tua Tagovailoa, come on down. I'm just glad I can pronounce Tua's name, Bloom. You don't know how long I stood in front of a mirror. I was like, Tagovailoa, Tua Tagovailoa. Boom, I got it. Well, what they don't have is a quarterback necessarily. And listen, we can talk about Ryan Fitzpatrick, right? And a little magic at the beginning, whatever. We can talk about Josh Rosen. I think, Bloom, I might have, I don't check Twitter that often other than my @ replies, but I think I saw you, putting out some Rosen stuff. That's cool. Kids got to stay away from partying. Bottom line, bottom line, like, okay, totally got screwed, franchise, Cardinals, blah, blah, blah. Like, yes, dude, I totally get it. And Josh Rosen, like our very own Jason Wood, who I think got involved in that thread, I thought Josh Rosen, from a technical standpoint, from in terms of his tool standpoint, was the number one quarterback. I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole now. And it has very little to do with what the Cardinals did to him. It has to do with him. This is about accountability. This is about, like, okay, yes, the Cardinals, horribly run organization. Steve Keim doesn't know what he's doing. Whatever you want to say, right? We can say that. And we can, oh, man, Josh Rosen. Oh, man. Or we can say, dude, it's you. Dude, it's you. Like, you already had this stuff swirling around you before. And in your pro career, you got to clean up the off-field stuff. You can't be a party boy. Like, none of that stuff that was around Josh Rosen. You got to be all about football. You can't think you're the smartest guy in the room. By the way, you're not, with Ryan Fitzpatrick there, ironically. But he, wasn't with Mike McCoy either. I'm sure they had some great debates as to who was the smartest guy in the room, because they try to outprove each other. And I guess this turns into a Rosen thing, Bloom, but it's like, I'm done making excuses for him. It's preseason watch list. I'm going to watch him. I already know the tools are there, but I want to see Josh Rosen really show that dedication that he needs. Beat out Ryan Fitzpatrick, or be there to take over when Fitzpatrick fails, because he will fail. That's what happens with Ryan Fitzpatrick. We already know that story.
Yeah.
We've seen it a zillion times. It's Groundhog's Day. It's just got a different helmet on. That's all it is. So I guess this just becomes, I'm watching Rosen in the preseason to see if the dynasty stock that I had, again, Rosen was my number one QB from a tool standpoint. All that dynasty stock I got in Josh Rosen, I want to see if it's worth anything, or if it's like GE, just sell, baby, while you can.
So let's get the fantasy part of this out of the way, the Dolphins quarterback. The good news is that, and again, because we're recording this after we've had about a week of camp, we can see that Brian Flores is not, I think Flores is going to be a pretty straight shooter. I think he's going to be pretty honest as NFL coaches go. And he's basically saying, look, Fitzpatrick's the starter. He hasn't said he's the starter. He said he's ahead. And he's saying he's ahead in terms of things like leadership. And of course, you would expect that with his veteran profile. But also, I think that Flores, coming from the Patriots organization, and just in general, we talk about this a lot on the show. Teams take on the personality of their head coach and their quarterback. Has Josh Rosen's shown yet a personality that you would want a team to take on? I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick, bless his heart, lives football at the edge, because from a physical standpoint, he should not be an NFL quarterback. But he has the nerve, I guess, to push it right to the edge where he can be an NFL quarterback until eventually the pendulum swings back and you see his deficiencies. But as far as rallying players, getting buy-in, inspiration, getting the coaches to give you the keys, I think Fitzpatrick does that, at least in terms of the culture that Flores wants to establish, which is, okay, they're not tanking for Tua, but they're certainly looking to the future with their personnel moves. But you don't ever want losing to be an expectation or a habit. Ryan Fitzpatrick helps with that, and he helps for fantasy. Ryan Fitzpatrick makes wide receivers fantasy relevant. So as long as Ryan Fitzpatrick is the starter, one or two of these wide receivers, we'll talk about how to figure out which ones will be relevant. But the more interesting thing is, it's funny, Cecil, like, how long will this go? Because the Dolphins, this episode, because the Dolphins are so, from an offensive standpoint, uninteresting. Maybe it's not that interesting because it gives us all these side topics to talk about. But I know that Rosen's talking about things like he can identify the middle linebacker now, make those calls, which someone's like, man, Mike McCoy, what was going on? Really?
Smartest guy in the room, just ask him.
Yeah. Ooh. But at the same time, like, Josh Rosen is nowhere near making this his team. Nowhere near that. And you're telling me you're going to pass on Tua because, well, maybe one day Josh Rosen might become the guy, if you squinted, you might see him become in a few years. I mean, he's working to become a backup at this point, based on, and some of it is that he's basically a rookie, because just wipe that Arizona year off the deck. But that means that he's not going to make them feel like, well, we can pass on Tua, unless there's some sort of Myles Garrett kind of level prospect to be weighing against that. And yes, the Dolphins are going to pick, I mean, maybe they won't pick first, maybe second. I mean, they're probably going to be picking first. So the good news is there's fantasy viability here. But the more interesting story here is, like you said, Josh Rosen's future. And while we'll likely include starting games, because if not, at least to see what Josh Rosen does, maybe to create some trade value, honestly, if you know you're going for that rookie in the first round next year. So this becomes a story. And see, I'm just afraid of this. So imagine Josh Rosen in the Patrick Mahomes situation, where he's in a good organization with good coaching, and he's allowed to be in an incubator behind a starter for a year. Maybe it's a whole different story. But in this career arc that he's on, this is exactly the kind of thing that I think makes Josh Rosen maybe eventually lose interest in football. He's his own man. He has interest outside of football, and that scares the NFL. And maybe this is one of those situations where that, I believe, sometimes irrational position will look smart.
Jimmy Garoppolo told Mark Schlereth that the best thing. See how I name drop? I like name drop in third person. Jimmy Garoppolo told Mark Schlereth that the main thing he learned from Tom Brady is that quarterback is a lifestyle.
Yeah.
You and I are all about beat of a different drummer, right? And
fantasy football podcast for the host is a lifestyle too.
Exactly. It's a rough one. But the thing is, like, we totally appreciate your Arian Fosters, right? We totally appreciate your different points of view. Like, anytime someone disagrees with me, I don't get outraged. I listen and I try to learn, and then I try to say what I believe. Like, it's pretty simple. I don't know why debate has been lost on society, Bloomer. On Dolphins in podcast turns into a whole different podcast.
Right.
But the point is this: I don't think you can do that at quarterback.
No,
I've said it for years. I don't think you can be a party boy at quarterback, which Rosen's had some tendencies there. Who knows what the hell he's doing on South Beach? No, nothing's come out or anything. I'm just telling you what I've heard. I got Packers fans' feelings the other day, but anyway,
I even got some pushback on that. Even my text messages blew up.
Sorry, man. Sorry. Anyway, the thing is with quarterback, I think you just got to breathe it. You just got to live it, and it's got to be your lifestyle. And if it's not, that's fine. But perhaps the NFL isn't for you as a QB. So with Josh Rosen, it's like, hope he makes the most of it, but don't see how he lasts in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm with you. But then we can talk about, well, how long is Kenyon Drake? Well, not necessarily going to last the NFL, but
why do they hate Kenyon Drake? Let's skip over Jake Reddick because I've never liked Jake. Sorry to Michigan fans. Like, we're just making everybody mad I am when we talk about quarterbacks. Like, sorry if you're a Michigan fan, Jake Reddick could never play in the NFL. Like, bottom line. Like, sorry. Like, how long I remember arguing with like Boise State fans when Kellen Moore came out, but he's gonna be like Tom Brady. Like, please stop. Let's get to Kenyon Drake because that's the most interesting thing. Like, Kalen Ballage should be Rashad Jennings, but he's not. As a runner, certainly. Now he's a better receiver than I think he showed last year. And at Arizona State, everyone go back. He scored 7 touchdowns in a game. Was that against Texas Tech? Like, play defense. But anyway, like, okay, Ballage has got some skill, but it's not like Kenyon Drake's a slappy, and he's so disrespected by that team. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm outraged about it. Like, Kenyon Drake's not a slappy, but they're just always constantly looking to replace him. So the language of the NFL is money. We're listening for drum beats. The drum beats have been all about Kalen Ballage and very little about Kenyon Drake. So regardless of our opinions of Kenyon Drake, Bloom, and I'm not saying he's Eric Dickerson or anything. Lord knows he's not. But I think he has more skill than they're letting him show. Yeah. And it looks like Kalen Ballage is going to be their guy.
Yeah. Or at the very least, make this a committee. That's what I keep hearing is this Michelle White kind of committee where Ballage is more Michelle and Drake is more White. And from a fantasy standpoint, that means Drake can have some consistent value because this team is going to be in games where they're behind and that running back who can run routes out of the backfield. And look, Ballage is also an excellent receiver. So these guys maybe are a little more interchangeable than that Michelle White because those guys aren't well, Michelle also actually has more receiving ability than he showed last year. So maybe I'm tap dancing here. But my point is this, that if we were starting just from zero without expectations, we'd say, well, Drake is probably still the more valuable guy here. And he's shown enough in the past to say maybe there's something there. And then Ballage becomes an interesting guy to take in the 13th, 14th, 15th round and see what happens. But expectations are important because in December 2017, Kenyon Drake looked like one of the best running backs in the league. And he was playing on a terrible team, on a terrible offensive line. By the way, on the offensive line note, the Dolphins fired Pat Flaherty, and already there were some changes in personnel on the offensive line, and Dave DeGuglielmo, who they hired as a consultant advisor kind of guy, is now the offensive line coach after doing a bang up job in that position for the Colts last year. So that helps. But man, they got Laramie Tunsil, and we'll see. So Drake was going in the 4th, 5th round because you're thinking new coaching staff, clean slate. And isn't it easy when you see something that seems irrational to say it must be Adam Gase? If it's irrational, it must be Adam Gase. Maybe it's not Adam Gase. Maybe it wasn't Adam Gase. Maybe there's things. And so people like to bring up how we coined on the show assumption of rational coaching and how that trips us up in fantasy football, because we see what we see and we say a rational coach would expand someone's role to this, but that doesn't always happen. But there's also something we say on the show, peeking through keyholes. And sometimes it's things that you can't see outside of the little keyhole shaped lens that we have. So there are things about Kenyon Drake, and some maybe not in the out of view. Some Mike Tanier bringing up, he just doesn't block. That's something that's not going to endear you to coaches. So this is the reality with Kenyon Drake. Total necessity pushed him into that role, and then his pure ability shined in that role in December 2017. We may never see it again. I would probably avoid this from a fantasy standpoint. I think Drake's ADP may bottom out 7th, 8th, 9th round, but still, I'm not at that point. There's still aspirational picks I like better than Drake at this point, because the writing's on the wall that this is going to be the approach. With Balaj, I still think that the guy needs to learn how to run. Could have said the same thing about Drake in his rookie year or second year. Balaj offers a lot as a receiver. Actually, he's natural. We can see his big playability. So we'll get a chance to scout him, evaluate him this year. But that's the evaluation year that the Dolphins are in. So Balaj has a chance to endear himself to Chad O'Shea and this new staff.
No offense to any of our friends who are featured in fantasy magazines, because that's really cool. Obviously, both of us have been, but it's like nobody uses magazines anymore. Please, for the love of God, because Drake was seen as like a 5th round pick. Like he still has a current ADP. By the way, on the interwebs, he still has a current ADP of running back 25, 505. No way in hell.
No,
no way in hell.
Not now.
I would take him there. Not at all. Chris Carson at 505 at running back 26. Sony Michel, running back 27. Tariq the Freak Cohen, running back 28. Like Tevin Coleman, running back 29. Lamar Miller, running back 30. Should I go on? No. Like, don't take Kenyon Drake. And watch the Kalen Balaj situation.
Right.
All right. Let's move on. Some backup running backs are interesting. Myles Gaskin, the rookie from Washington, has what scouts call early elusiveness. Bloom, I love that. But overall, not that bursty, explosive guy down the field with those big plays. Kenneth Farrow, really good, all-purpose guy. Probably won't make the team. Patrick Laird, they pick up as a free agent, college free agent. Mark Walton. Very interesting. Like, incredibly interesting. If you were just to say, on a pure skill set standpoint, who is the most skillful and most naturally talented runner, and probably receiver too, but who is the best talented back on the Dolphins roster? It's Mark Walton. Can he stay out of trouble? Can he even make the team? Like, there's all sorts of questions around Mark Walton, but you bet your ass I'm going to be I'm going to be watching Mark Walton in the preseason watch list.
A chance at redemption back home in Miami, and a great 3rd down back type, but with a big playability, where Myles Gaskin is a 3rd down back type in a way that he's going to be competent at all of his jobs. So yeah, absolutely. Mark Walton getting this chance is very intriguing. We got to remember that he's not the typical guy that gets cut because he can't play. He's a guy that got cut because of what was happening off the field.
Let's talk about these Dolphins wide receivers. And well, we opened up complaining about Josh Rosen. That was me. And then Ryan Fitzpatrick saying, hey, you can make some fantasy value. Okay. Who is it? Now, we can run through all the names, including the new guy, Alan Hearns. But listen, is it Devontae Parker? Is it Kenny Stills? I got mad respect for Jakeem Grant because he's tiny and he's a weapon, but that's a little bit later in the show. Let's talk about this top of the depth chart wide receivers, Parker, Stills. If you want to throw in Albert Wilson, that's cool too.
I do. And really, I'm never going to really criticize anybody's 13th or 14th round or later pick. So throwing one of those picks at a Miami receiver because it's Ryan Fitzpatrick makes sense. You got Devontae Parker. It's a tradition. Devontae Parker balls out in practice and never translates to the field on Sundays. And we've already turned the page on him, where we know it's kind of where we're at with Kenyon Drake, where we say we're not going to say it's irrational coaching to not use him, or it's the coaches that are the problem. We know that's Devontae Parker that's the problem. Maybe the light bulb could go on. Maybe it could come together for him. What do you lose if it doesn't? You just make a waiver wire pickup. Kenny Stills, we know he can play. He can play in the slot and outside. He can be a deep receiver. When we know that, look at what. So Cease, who was the guy? Deshaun Jackson last year with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Who has the most similar skill set to Deshaun Jackson? Who can play the Deshaun Jackson role in the passing game? Be Kenny Stills. So Kenny Stills is an interesting guy to see if that kind of connection gets rekindled. And then there's Albert Wilson, who was coming on last year in that slot role. So Albert Wilson can be the guy who gets those high percentage targets. Albert Wilson can be the guy who gets set up for the run after catch opportunities. The hip injury, which was a bit of a mystery in the offseason, he's clear to go. So taking any one of these guys in a best ball draft late or in a regular redraft late, because the team's going to be behind, they're going to be passing, any one of them could emerge. Or it also could be a situation where week to week it changes who is relevant. But as long as Fitzpatrick's the quarterback, someone's going to be relevant.
Yeah, someone somewhere. Maybe it's Allen Hurns, maybe it's Jakeem Grant, Reese Horn, Isaiah Ford, Shrine Game. I think it was a couple of years ago. Preston Williams is the guy. He's the guy. I mean, we're talking all about CSU receivers, right? Wherever we turn around. Michael Gallup, right? Well, let's talk about Rashard Higgins. Preston Williams might be better than both of them. And that's a high praise, Bloom. Again, we don't sit here and talk on and on about Colorado State receivers, but they've identified some skill, certainly at that position, with the players that I've just mentioned, and Williams, who they picked up as a free agent, who, again, with some off-field stuff, got to clean that up, stay out of trouble, all that good stuff. Preston Williams is definitely a player to watch in the preseason.
Absolutely. Preston Williams. And see, I feel like 10 years ago, whenever big wide receivers were all the rage, the guys who could just dominate at the catch point and were good movers, not necessarily Julio Jones level athletes, but just good enough movers. Like that wide receiver is out of vogue in the NFL. And Preston Williams tested terribly at his pro day, ensuring that he wasn't going to go drafted. He had a lot of off-field questions too, but they like him in Miami. And he's exactly the kind of player they should take a chance on and see what happens. So preseason watch list, that's the guy you're circling big time. Also, Allen Hurns trying to make the team, although if he makes the team, he's making it at the expense of someone like that, or someone like Matt Waldman favorite Isaiah Ford. And then I'll mention this about Jakeem Grant, who if you ask Jakeem Grant, he's like, don't count me out. I mean, Jakeem Grant can play in the slot. Jakeem Grant can get open deep. Imagine if I told you that Jakeem Grant ended up with Arizona, or Jakeem Grant, if more teams implement pure air raid concepts, now a player like Jakeem Grant becomes a lot more interesting in the NFL.
What's the difference between him and Ryan Switzer?
Right.
I mean, honestly, and Grant might be better. Grant might be better.
Absolutely. And of course, Cease, I'm going to glow. The guy who I glow is much or more than John Brown now. The ideal here is Kiki Cutie in that role. So these guys that we said they're too tiny in the NFL. Sure, they put up big numbers. Sure, they were really productive, but that doesn't translate. It's going to start translating soon.
Be ahead of it.
Yeah.
Be ahead of it. Are the Dolphins ahead or behind with Mike Gesicki?
Yeah.
I'm never really that impressed with his skill set. Again, maybe he's the greatest player ever, and I just don't know that. But I don't see it, Bloom.
No.
And in fact, none of these tight ends, we'll just throw them all in. We've been a little chatty on the Dolphins episode.
See, the upset.
I thought it'd be like 10 minutes.
Bet the over. Yeah.
Go the over. It's like the national anthem, right? We're going to throw in a couple of oodles and doodles. I don't like any of these Dolphins tight ends. I'll just be honest.
Dwayne Allen, just injuries robbed him of what we could have seen. Gesicki, he bulked up to become a better blocker. He's behind Nick O'Leary right now. It's Durham Smythe, developmental guy from the previous regime.
I do like him. Sure. Keep an eye on the Stanford kid, right? He's Stanford. Yeah. Fourth rounder. Yep.
So, okay. But yeah, this could be a position where they go back to the drawing board next year and take somebody or sign somebody, because these guys basically are playing for their 2020 fate for this team. And Gesicki does not sound like, again, clean slate. Adam Gase, why are you turning him into a blocker? Well, it sounds like the Patriots coaching staff, I'm just saying, wants him to be a blocker too, and it's not going well.
That is a wrap for the Miami Dolphins here on the preseason watch list. It's 32 teams, 32 episodes, and a bunch of bickering. I mean, every skill position player that you want to know about, we talk about right here on this show, working our way through the AFC East. And you know where we got to go next. And it's a place where championships abound. It's a place where, well, don't hate me because you ain't me. That's what Patriots fans say, and they're right. What can Tom Brady and company do this year? That's next. I'll have to ask you who was texting you.
Oh, yes. I can't
Yeah,
say
off
because
the
we're
air,
still
off the
alive.
air.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right. Mm-hmm. Look at all this good extra stuff people get.
I know.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Tom Brady's the greatest of all time. Okay, get that out of the way and just deal with it, right? I've regularly thought John Elway was the greatest quarterback of all time. You can't deny it. With Tom Brady, now 100 years old or whatever he is, Bloom. Was he 40, 41, whatever the number is? Like, okay. And the Patriots can do whatever. Like, they can sling it a little bit more, maybe not as much because, age is catching up with Brady a bit. And I think this running back and wide receiver situation is much more interesting. But with Brady, what kind of fantasy value can still be had with the old grizzled veteran QB?
Well, look, Tom Brady, now you can get him as like 15th, 18th, 20th quarterback off the board. And it seems like he has a really low ceiling. No Gronk. And it's not like Gronk added a lot of numbers last year.
No Gronk for now.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. No. So Brady, there's just nothing sexy about him as a fantasy quarterback this year. I mean, if you're weighing Tom Brady against Dak Prescott or Josh Allen or Lamar, really? I mean, why would you even think about that? Now, he can still support value of the receivers on this team, including James White. He can still make this offense work well, but it's not going to be a high-flying pass offense. It's not going to be a prolific pass offense. It's going to be probably the most balanced offense this side of Seattle, Jacksonville, Detroit. I mean, when we look at the numbers, they may look like an offense that numbers wise resembles the ones that we're going to go, oh, no, this team's very boring about how they try to secure their W's. What makes the Patriots not boring is they actually secure the W's and all the way up to the last game of the year. Offensive line, some questions here. Isaiah Wynn is having a nice uneventful training camp, and he's going to play left tackle for this team. Marcus Cannon, a nice solid right tackle. Cecil, if either of those guys go down, keep your phone by your side because they don't have anybody. I mean, they have their 4th round pick who's hurt. They tried to get Jared Veldier to be their swing tackle. He retired. So they don't have anybody. They have to have their their tackles stay healthy, or that could be a problem for this team. But moving the ball is not going to be a problem. It's just going to be deliberate, matriculating the ball down the field.
Matriculating down the field. Now, Brian Hoyer, whatever, nobody's watching him. I'm definitely going to be watching Jarrett Stidham. Now, I'm going to use an example, and it's not a good one. And I will also, in the same breath, tell you that I'm excited about the Auburn quarterback. It reminds me of kind of the Matt Barkley situation where if he's this guy's going to be a first rounder, he's going to be a top quarterback, he's going to go first round, and then he doesn't. And he goes to the 4th round, ironically, just like Matt Barkley did. That's what Jarrett Stidham was. If we rewind a year ago, people were saying like, oh yeah, Stidham, he'll be in the first round conversation. I was saying it on the Denver airwaves, like, hey, if you're sick of the Case Keenum thing and Paxton Lynch can't pay attention, like, watch out for Jarrett Stidham from Auburn. He's got some accuracy, a little bit more athletic than some people think. And this is a guy that can work well through progressions with the Patriots. Now, he might be Zach Robinson, dear friend of the show, Zach Robinson, who used to coach my son at quarterback. I'd give him some tips anyway. So we've seen this before. Kevin O'Connell, right? Bloom, name the Patriots backup. We're like, oh, Patriots. But Jarrett Stidham might be that guy. So certainly preseason watch list. I'll be watching to see how he's taken to the pro game and how he's learning from Tom Brady.
Yeah, and just really quickly to add to Hoyer, it gives them one of the best backup situations in the league. If something happens to Brady, they have someone who knows the offense in and out, who's experienced, who's played in the playoffs. But still, that's a lot more than a lot of teams can say. Stidham's the guy, and you nailed it, Cecil. It's one of those quarterbacks that the year before he came out, his arrow was pointing up. When he's coming out, not so much, but Patriots can get that arrow pointing up again, and so can the preseason, that very first preseason, of course. So Patriots quarterback, and eventually they got a plan for life after Brady, right? I mean, it's close.
Well, they did have a plan. Bill couldn't implement it. You're not getting rid of Tommy to put in Jimmy Garoppolo. And again, I mean, that I guess that's part of the conversation, Bloom. It's not fantasy relevant, but it's like, is Belichick going to get jock blocked again by his owner?
Right.
You
Right.
know, I don't think Stidham will be Garoppolo, and I don't think Stidham will be
No.
that fast up to speed if Brady's got what's Brady got left? A couple of years? Like, I don't know. Who knows? But is is Robert Kraft just going to be like Tommy's playing until his arm falls off?
Right. Right. Well, I mean, there's stranger things have happened. Owners have intervened to make more absurd things happen. So yeah, I think but that's the background of watching Stidham in the preseason and watching his development, because the better that goes, whether it becomes like Garoppolo and they trade him for a second round pick, or someone that eventually is the heir to the team, that's what they're thinking, I think, when they take him. Not that he will be, but they hope they can turn him into that.
Love this running back situation. I mean, absolutely love it. Sony Michel with that talent. We all know there's no mystery around what Sony Michel is. There's mystery around, or worry, I guess, Bloom. I should just ask you, like, how worried are you about Sony Michel's knee situation? James White, we know. I'm going to throw in Damian Harris because I think Damian Harris is the one. Like, if Michel has a slight setback, if Michel has a slight stumble to his game, if there's any sort of speed bump, is Damian Harris that guy who can take over? Is Damian Harris almost the perfect blend as a Patriots running back? Like, Sony Michel is a more talented runner. Damian Harris might be more well-rounded, right? Not as explosive, not as dynamic, but really solid. That's what the Patriots need in their backfield. They've won Super Bowls with really solid running backs, and not those dynamic league-leading rushers. I hate to sound like Jerry Jones. Like, you don't need a league-leading rusher to win the Super Bowl, but the Patriots have proven it. So let's talk about Michel, what he is, what's your worry. Let's talk about James White. We know what he's going to do as a receiver. And then Damian Harris, the rookie from Alabama, getting thrown in the mix here, could be just a fantastic third-round pick for this team.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that you're going to see him contribute. And this is one of those things where when there's uncertainty, you take the cheapest guy when it's a good backfield. And this is a good backfield. And this is going to be a productive backfield. It's always, when you add up all of the fantasy stats for a backfield in a given season, the Patriots are always in the top 3 or top 5. And that's not going to change. This team's going to be on a lot of winning game scripts. They're always going to establish the run. They're always going to rack up those rushing touchdowns. So there's Sony Michel, who racked up those yards and touchdowns last year. The good news is he's off the PUP and practicing. The bad news is that he's getting that Todd Gurley veteran plan. I think he's about the same age as Gurley, like 6 months or so apart. And when you're 24, 25 years old, you shouldn't be on the veteran plan. You know, Julio Jones not playing in the preseason, that makes sense to me.
Fine.
24, 25-year-old running backs being treated that way, I mean, they're pacing them so they go for the entire year. But now they have enough players. And this harkens back to when people say, I don't take a Belichick back. He plays games, messes. Jonas Gray messes with us. But I think how he is messing with us here is, with the exception of James White, these guys are interchangeable. In Michel, and the hope is that because Michel missed all of camp last year, they couldn't really implement him very well as a receiver. But you need some more practice participation if he's going to be unlocking some of that skill set we saw at Georgia. But I'm not sure. Harris is the one showing out early in camp as a very competent receiver out of the backfield, and we know he can bang it between the tackles. And there's Rex Burkhead, who maybe isn't as powerful in the lower body as a Damian Harris, but has some similar versatility, or even more versatility. Remember, Burkhead can play in the slot and do some more James White type things as a receiver. So you see this spectrum, if you will, from Michel maybe as the pure runner, because that's how they used him. Not that he actually, I mean, there's a lot more to his game. I'm saying in that role, to White as the pure receiver, and then you can kind of slide this along and see different mixes of this, and it just facilitates what the Patriots want to do. From a fantasy standpoint, even with Michel back out there with some depressed ADP from the offseason knee procedure, I just don't want the guy who's already hurt. I don't want the guy who I know has to be managed all year, even though he came through last year, because they have a deeper backfield. Burkhead, I won't be shocked if he gets cut, but you keep a guy like that around for depth. Harris is the one that I can see getting those goal line carries, getting some receptions, just making a case to play and adding a little bit more and being a little more durable than any of the other similar guys. But James White is the one that's most interesting to me from a fantasy standpoint, Cease, because of this. You think of Tom Brady and you think of this offense, no Gronk, and we'll get to the wide receivers. Maybe it's number one wide receiver outside is going to be Maurice Harris. So what do you do if you're Brady? I mean, look, do you think the Patriots care if they have 13 play 50-yard field goal drives and 17 play 70-yard touchdown drives and are constantly in 3rd and 2 and 3rd and 3 and just convert and eat the clock and convert? That actually sounds like something that Bill Belichick would make him sweaty and excited. Like, oh yeah, that sounds fantastic. White and Edelman, White and Edelman, White and Edelman. I feel like this offense is going to run the pass offense through White and Edelman, and 100 catches for James White doesn't seem outlandish to me.
Breaking the record for running back receptions doesn't seem outlandish for James White. We're gonna watch it certainly, and we're gonna watch. Well, you brought up Rex Burkhead, Brandon Bolden. Any love for Brandon Bolden?
Yeah, well, sure.
Nick Brissett, college Bayou Bengals, baby.
Yeah.
Of course, LSU running back here.
And didn't Brandon Bolden have a long touchdown for Miami last year? Was it even in the Miami Miracle game? I don't remember. But you know, he's a special teamer. You know, he's going to make the team. An old hand back with the Patriots. He's getting some first team reps at running back, I think. So, you know, I mean, if everybody else gets hurt, Brandon Bolden could do something. And then I guess we don't really have Ralph Webb is with the Steelers. He was the original pickup. You know, they don't have. Usually the Patriots will pick up that free agent after the draft that would say, "Ooh, watch that guy." But this year, I guess he said it would be Brissett, and he doesn't have the appeal that Webb had to me last year.
Bloom, you spoiled it.
Yeah,
wide receiver position totally spoiled.
Yeah,
totally spoiled. Right?
Maurice Harris.
Bloom, yeah. Maurice Harris is their top receiver. And it's the preseason watch list. We're watching training camp reports, but you just put it out at footballguys.com, Bloom, like the 25 things to watch from training camp reports. And it was about Maurice Harris there. So let's kind of save Keenan Allen's cousin for just a little bit.
Yeah.
And let's, brought up Julian Edelman. Okay, we know what to expect there. N'Keal Harry, and the Patriots have swung and missed plenty on wide receivers. Plenty. So do not be surprised, despite his physical skill set, if N'Keal Harry ends up being more Cordell Patterson, right? Or Laquan Treadwell. Like, N'Keal Harry has not been getting the buzz that a first-round pick should be getting. Doesn't mean he's a bum. Just means that, why Maurice Harris could actually be the guy there. So we kind of got to save Harris, but let's kind of jump through some hoops here.
Sure. Well, first with Julian Edelman, he's got that broken thumb to get over. Assuming that happens, 120 catches, very possible. I think you're going to see him catch 7, 8, 9 balls a game as long as he stays healthy. And 4th round in PPR leagues, I'm liking that. Then what after that? Well, I haven't heard any buzz about Josh Gordon reinstatement, even though they've been conducting themselves as if they expect him to play again. Demaryius Thomas, we have no idea when he's not following in the footsteps of Emmanuel Sanders, who's blowing away his return to play timeline. And we may not see Demaryius Thomas this year at all, really. We certainly may not see him in the first 6 weeks.
He may end up just retiring.
Yeah. So that leaves, there was Harry, and I get it. People were wild about Harry. That's a reference nobody is going to get. But hey, look, I didn't think he fit the MO of the typical receiver that the Patriots could turn into a player that excelled in their offense, like say Malcolm Mitchell, speaking of retiring. So Harry's coming along slow. I mean, look, I'm not saying write him off. It was a first-round bust. But if you're looking for a story that says big first-year impact for a rookie, this is not the story. These are not the droids you're looking for. Okay? This is not going to end well if you're thinking N'Keal Harry is going to be a big breakout player unless something changes dramatically. What is dramatic is Maurice Harris. I think it was Maurice Harris and Andre Ellington. Andre Ellington's back on my mind. Bruce Ellington. They were signed like in the same week as like these afterthought signings. The Patriots, free agency happens, and with the exception of Stephon Gilmore, and again, Belichick, brilliant. They're usually quiet, and then when everything dies down, they'll make a few little signings, often re-signing Julian Edelman or something like that. And sometimes we look back and say, oh, that actually ended up being important. And Bruce Ellington barely even made it with the team for more than a couple of weeks, I think. But Maurice Harris, who's had some big time moments with Washington, go back and watch his best 2 or 3 plays with Washington, and those are about as good as any receiver's best 2 or 3 plays. But he didn't get a consistent opportunity. And we know with Tom Brady and the option routes, it's just a certain kind of approach to the position to make it in New England that not every receiver has. And some receivers that could be very successful elsewhere just are never going to be successful in New England. And maybe some receivers where they're elsewhere and it doesn't take as much advantage of their ability to understand, be in sync with the quarterback with those option routes, just be on the same page with him. Harris is doing it. And every report's the same. Sees the drum beat. And everyone gives me credit for drum beat, but I think it was you first that use that term drumbeat.
Yeah, it was us. It's always us.
It's always the
holding
Audible.
hands.
Yeah, always walking into the sunset. But the drumbeat on Harris is overwhelming, and it's unqualified. They're saying he's the best receiver in practice, and not by a small margin. So
guys like Mike Reese are reporting that. We always listen to Mike Reese.
Yeah. So Maurice Harris should be on your late round radar. Maurice Harris is absolutely an obstacle for Harry right now, and Maurice Harris could be relevant in the early part of the fantasy football season.
Nikhil?
Nikhil, I think. Nikhil.
Anunnaki Keel.
Yeah, I have trouble with that one too. Yeah.
All right. Reserve receivers for the Patriots. And Maurice Harris isn't a reserve receiver. A couple of interesting college free agents this year, and a guy from last year in Braxton Berrios. The Patriots have a redshirt program. It's illegal, but they still do it. And the NFL just kind of like looks the other way. Like, hey, Braxton Berrios, you got a hangnail. We're going to put you on injured reserve. Not saying that's what happened, but Braxton Berrios has some skill. If there's a Julian Edelman replacement, because Maurice Harris is a different player from Edelman. If there's a Julian Edelman replacement, it is Braxton Berrios. Message. 3 free agent receivers from this year to watch. Rookie free agents. Jacoby Myers, Ryan Davis, Gunnar Ozlowski, whatever. Damon Patterson, Matthew Slater, Danny Etling, who might be their Taysom Hill, right? So some interesting names. Preseason watch list. We'll be watching.
Sure. Braxton Berrios is the most interesting because while Edelman's out, he's going to get a chance to show that he can be the next in line for that shifty, smart slot receiver for the Patriots who excels and produces in a way that someone with his pedigree shouldn't. Then you have Dontrell Inman, we should bring up because he continues to produce when he gets a chance and he continues to hang around the league. But it is some of these undrafted guys. I'll bring up Patterson too because he was a training camp star for the Steelers last year. So it just there's the Steelers fan neurosis where like, of course the Steelers are going to let someone slip through their fingers that the Patriots turn into something. I'm scarred forever by seeing James Harrison in a Patriots uniform, by the way, forever. I'll never be able to get that out of my mind. But Jacoby Myers, Ryan Davis, these again are slot types, crafty, smart receivers who fit in that Patriots mold. Danny Etling, I think he will be their Taysom Hill. And I think that Bill Belichick sees that trend and wants to do something with it. And the last question is, how many rings does Matthew Slater have now?
1 ring to rule them all.
Yeah.
Anyway. Do we have to talk about the tight ends?
Matt Lacoste.
Can we just talk about? Yeah, don't ask him to block. And you mentioned with the tackle situation, right? Isaiah Wynn, stay healthy. Everybody stay healthy always. But like, you don't really have anybody to block. Biggie Ben Watson's there, but he's popped for 4 games because of whatever performance enhancing or whatever. I still think Gronk comes back. Maybe this is the Calvin Johnson, Barry Sanders. We've seen this before, Bloom. No. You've been playing fantasy football long enough, and yes, we've been playing since Barry Sanders was in the league. Like you've been playing long enough, you know these stories. Like I know he's retired, but dude, he's gonna come back. And it's a fantasy, and it's we're hoping and wishful that we can see Gronkowski once again and catching passes from Tom Brady. I just think there's a moment in the season where Tommy calls him up. Gronk, baby, what are you doing? No, put the beer bong down. I gotta talk to you. I need you. And if Tommy needs it, like the bat signal, baby, like Tommy, he's gonna put out that TB12 signal, and Gronk is gonna respond. At least that's what I dream, Bloom, at night.
It would be fun. We would be excited. We would be really, really excited if that happened. But I still think not for fantasy. I mean, he wasn't.
Should you take Gronkowski with your last pick?
No. Yeah, right. No, because he wasn't barely worth the last pick at times last year. I mean, I know that at the end of the year his numbers added up to whatever, but no, I know this because I spent a first round pick on him in some leagues. I'll admit it. Because I thought he was set up for the biggest season of his career, or his biggest season in 4 or 5 years. So. But like you said, you have Lacoste. Steven Anderson at one point was the undrafted free agent who made as an H-back receiver type. But again, they don't need a receiver type. Lance Kendrick's more of a receiver type. Andrew Beck, a guy that maybe they put on the practice squad, H-back UT. Maybe Ryan Izzo makes the team. Ben Watson is going to make the team, and he will be the one who maybe provides some fantasy relevance. And they know what they get with Ben Watson. And did the Ben Watson, Champ Bailey play happen before we started the show? I think it did, or maybe the year we started the show. So Ben Watson is still around. So
And
that's
Champ Bailey's going into the Hall of Fame.
Shut it down.
Shut it down. All right. That's a wrap for the New England Patriots here on the preseason watch list. It is the Audible, the footballguys.com podcast. And we're going 32 teams, 32 episodes, every skill position player you want to know about, we talk about right here on the show. And to wrap things up, our man, Chase Stewart. Congrats on the nuptials. Chase Stewart. Love that guy.
Good summer to get married.
We're going to talk about his New York Jets and what kind of a jump can Sam Darnold take in year 2? That's next. All right, 3, 2, 1. It's really going to help that jump for Sam Darnold, Bloom, that you've got Le'Veon Bell. Like, it's hard to get through this Darnold take without talking about Bell as well. So let's kind of do that, and we'll get back to Bell, I'm sure. We'll talk about running backs more, but like having that sort of receiver to be that relief valve security blanket for a young QB. Other weapons, sure, some weapons suspended, other weapons emerging, Adam Gase looking at tacos, like all this stuff. But with Sam Darnold, man, you get an asset to throw to like Le'Veon Bell. You'd better be better in year 2.
So for fantasy, Darnold's not that interesting as an asset himself because, I mean, just the quarterback's so deep. But it is interesting to think of him as someone that could inflate the value of some of the players in this offense, including Le'Veon Bell, but most especially Robbie Anderson. There's a question about the offensive line. I mean, it's funny, Cecil, because I don't know what you're hearing, if you're hearing anything at all about Trent Williams, but it sure seems like he's going to get dealt a la Dwayne Brown. Maybe get dealt to Dwayne Brown's old team. The Jets would be an interesting team to trade for him. They did get Kelechi Osemele to help the offensive line, but there's some things that need to be settled there on that offensive line. But it really comes back to Adam Gase, the Gase-Logains connection, the Gase-Logains syndicate. But see, I'll turn this around and toss it back to you because you actually covered an Adam Gase team, not a head coach team, but a team that Adam Gase was part of. And from the outside looking in, like you said, there's the dancing tacos and things like that. He has a good reputation around the league. This year, Cease, it felt like the narrative kind of flipped to where it was, well, Gase didn't make Manning. Manning made Gase. But what would you add? Because really, it's all about Gase. If Gase really is deserving of some of this praise and deserving of the reputation and really takes a Sam Darnold and helps him get to the next level, then we'll all be eating some crow and saying, well, we were making fun of him, and plus, look at some of these things. Kenyon Drake, Devontae Parker, et cetera, were saying maybe it wasn't Gase. But what's your impressions just from being in the building with Gase when you listen to what everybody says? How far off are we, or how close are we?
No, I mean, there's a balance. It was Peyton Manning's show, but Gase set things up to make him comfortable. And that's the one thing with Sam Darnold that I look at this year. It's like, now, what do you do best, kid? Let's just keep doing that. Like, it's rinse, repeat offense with Adam Gase. Like, he can have some complications to what he does, but instead, he just kind of tries to simplify with what you like the best. So I'll be interested to see, like, what route concepts does Sam Darnold like best? There should be plenty of sale concepts if you're talking about Adam Gase. So, like, how do they set him up? We'll get to those receivers, Jamison Crowder, et cetera. How does he use those type of guys? But I feel that it's making Darnold comfortable by only asking him to do what he's comfortable doing at this point and perhaps feeding him a little bit more. That's how him and Manning work together. Like, Manning loves Gase, like loves him. When Manning wouldn't, or should I say didn't, come back to Denver after he retired, to walk through training camp, Manning's been out there like 5 days out of the 11 days this year. But when he wasn't coming back to the Broncos, just whatever, separation, whatever, he was going with Gase. He was going out to see Adam Gase. And, it's something that I think was overblown in terms of people saying, oh, it was Peyton's offense. That's fine. You're mostly correct. But know that Adam Gase set things up to do what Peyton was comfortable with and what he liked to do. I think that's what he'll do with Sam Darnold.
Yeah, and hopefully, unlike last year, Darnold will stay on the field because, well, actually, we have talked about some teams with worse backups than Trevor Siemian.
Yeah, well, is Trevor Siemian the backup? Because there was a report that was like Davis Webb. I don't think it was Manish.
No.
Maybe it was, but it was like Davis Webb. Watch out for Davis Webb. And the Giants are shaking their fists like, oh, let him get away. But you got Daniel Jones. You're fine. Trevor's there. You don't want him playing, basically. Luke Falk's there. Like, it's just, it better be Darnold. And, let's see that jump. Even if he struggles, we're going to see as much Darnold as possible, right?
Yeah.
Fine. Let's see what he's got.
And as we go along this offense, it's a very fragile offense, right? I mean, there isn't a lot of players to step in if the key players go down. First and foremost, Darnold.
First and foremost, Darnold. Second, Le'Veon Bell. And there's some interesting running backs to get to. Certainly, maybe some that got cut recently, but Le'Veon Bell there, a year off, back, apologizing to fantasy GMs everywhere, Bloom, for people that drafted him last year. And that takes me back to that conversation. Just take him. What's the most he can miss? About the whole year. Bell is back. Is it automatically back to being in that conversation where we have the big four, right? Sound like thrash metal, Bloom, the fathers of thrash metal, the big four. So there's a big four in fantasy this year at running back. Should Bell actually be 4.5? No. Should he be in that 4? Should he be in that conversation?
No. And so with both Bell and Antonio Brown, what we're going to learn this year is how much value the Steelers' surroundings added to them, right? Because with Bell, if he was so much the generator of the value in the Steelers' backfield, why was D'Angelo Williams almost the number 1 running back? Why was James Conner a running back 1? Why was it so easy for whoever replaced him to be as productive as he was? And there were times that his play was breathtaking, but at the same time, that wasn't the last time we saw him in a Steelers uniform. He wasn't quite as that initial burst, and this wasn't as overwhelming as it was when he would be decisive earlier in his career. And while he's not necessarily a player on decline, I think he might be a player that has peaked. And then when you put him in the Jets with the Jets offensive line and the Jets offense, it's just not going to be the same as the surroundings in Pittsburgh. In the second round, I understand why you might start thinking about Bell. I just think there are more enticing players. I probably still take Conner, honestly, at equal level to Bell at this point because of the quality situation, even if he doesn't get as much work. And then again, Adam Gase. But look, Adam Gase is kind of a my way or highway. I'm going to prove that I'm in charge kind of head coach. And will he give Bell 85 or 90% of the touches and the carries, the snaps, the way the Steelers did? I'm not sure about that. And then we have this thing, Cease hanging over this, that Gase didn't really want to spend the money on Bell. So not someone I'm going to invest in. And I just don't see a scenario where he resumes the form in terms of numbers that he posted with Steelers.
Yeah, and how many onions, sorry, Joe, is Gase going to have to not necessarily bench Le'Veon Bell, but if you're ownership, you should be like, we invested a lot, use them up.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a brutal position, it's a brutal game. But that's your mindset with Le'Veon Bell. Gase might just be like, no, he's not doing it my way. And remember, again, being in a building with Adam Gase, remember how frustrating he's treated running backs.
Yeah.
And not just in Miami.
Right.
Go back to Denver. Go back to Ronnie and CJ, right? CJ and Ronnie CJ. Where's No Sean Moreno? By the way, No Sean was at the scrimmage, the Broncos scrimmage on Saturday. So good to see him. Looks in good shape. But anyway, let's move on to the backups behind Le'Veon Bell. Some very interesting names that you should know. Eli McGuire being the one for me because of that explosive agility. He's Chris Thompson, who can stay healthy-ish. Eli McGuire's there. That's the most interesting name. Ty Montgomery's interesting in what is he now? What can he be? We know about the receiving ability, converted receiver, blah, blah, blah. But what's he like with his another team, right? Because Ty Montgomery, they pick up, see what he's got. Bilal Powell, they bring back. I'm just going to throw them all at you, Bloom, because Trenton Cannon's like Eli McGuire to me. Trenton Cannon's super quick, Virginia State, right? Trenton Cannon's got that explosive ability, certainly can win with his quickness. So we'll see. I guess Valentine Holmes will throw in here too. But for me, I love Eli McGuire, love that upside. Powell, we know. Montgomery, we should know, but we don't know how he'll work with this team. So some interesting names.
And when we have these kind of throw them all into one takes, it means there's not a clear backup. It means there's not a clear guy to target if Le'Veon Bell were to go down. And it's not a great situation anyway. They can all catch the ball out of the backfield, I'll say that. But I think this is probably a situation to avoid on the waiver wire if the starter goes down. And Bilal Powell, very useful running back on the tail end of his career, but they did bring him back. Ty Montgomery has shown a lot when he's gotten opportunities, but just shouldn't have tried that kickoff return with the Packers, and his star has been falling since then. But he's got a good receiving ability, and obviously, he's shown some burst. Trent Cannon, the best straight line speed, as you said. McGuire has maybe shown more than people remember on an NFL field, but these are all replacement level players at running back, not guys who are going to add value. In a situation like the Jets, that means they're not backup running backs that you care about.
Bloom, I get nervous doing the preseason watch list because it's like, please let this episode come out before somebody gets hurt.
Yeah.
Please let this episode, please let it. And still, like, people will still listen it's podcasting, right? Listen when you want to or when you can. And I'm super excited to get louder with Crowder, with Jamison Crowder, with his new team, with the Jets. The reports have been very positive, but then a foot and ankle thing for Jamison Crowder. It's like, damn it. Can you just please stay healthy? Because the talent is there. And we can talk plenty about Robbie Anderson, certainly, and Quincy Enunwa and what they're going to do this year, and Adam Gase and blah, blah, blah. But for me, I guess my own personal opinion, Bloom, I was most excited about Crowder because we know the talent's there, and we get the glimpse. We get the picture. We don't get the full picture because homeboy gets, hurt. And then all of a sudden, well, guess what? Foot and ankle thing. But he's cleared now, so it's okay for now.
Yeah, so you have these pieces that fit together. I'll just take the top three receivers together, because you have Quincy Enunwa, who was actually looked like he was going to be racking up numbers last year before he got hurt in the slot and doing some things after the catch. But now that's Jamison Crowder, who just needs to stay healthy, which has been a problem the last 2 years. We know what he can do in the middle of the field, and he can make some plays downfield, even was crafty in the red zone and then scoring touchdowns at times in Washington. But Enunwa and Crowder, I think, are more guys you wait to see if they establish that chemistry or resume the chemistry in Enunwa's case with Darnold, or Gase's offense, really the Gase-Logaines offense, really highlights them.
Gaines?
Yeah. Travell came up again. He was the one who confirmed arthritis for Todd Gurley, man. It was.
By the way, they made a Brian Banks movie. Did you know that?
They did?
Yeah, it's called Brian Banks. And
wow.
I just saw the trailer, a commercial on TV, and I was like, I wonder if Travell's in it.
Wow, that would be awesome.
Travell could be an actor, like totally.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Travell could be whatever Travell wants to be. It's our world, and Travell's living in it. Yeah. But it's really, to me, when we're talking about Jets wide receivers, it's about Robbie Anderson. And so if things come together, if Gase really isn't a madman and gets something out of this offense and takes Darnold to the next level, what we saw last year with Darnold and Anderson at the end of the season portend big things. And Anderson's playing for a contract. And Anderson can make those big plays downfield. He's got the straight line speed. He can separate in a straight line, but he can also win at the catch point. He can make those high wire act plays that make your fantasy week as your wide receiver 3, where you draft him. And we could be looking back at him as a top 15, top 20 fantasy wide receiver if he picks up, or he and Darnold pick up where they left off. And that's a big element in this offense, is downfield passing to Robbie Anderson. And I've said this on the show multiple times, but I'll say it again just to drive the point home. If you were watching Robbie Anderson making some of the plays he did, and you didn't know he was an undrafted player, you would say that guy's one of the best wide receivers in the league. Now, is not always consistently playing like that, but it was coming together at the end of the year. If that carries over and then this offense sets him up to succeed, a lot of people will be happy that they took him in their fantasy drafts.
I'm happy anytime I get to talk about a Clemson receiver that you're not really familiar with yet, Sharon Peak. We'll see what he does. It is preseason watch list, so Tim White, Josh Bellamy, Cadre Henderson's there. Remember Deontay Thompson?
Yeah.
A couple of undrafted free agents too, Greg Dortch, Jeff Smith. So, again, interesting names. Peak is at the peak of my list. Blaine.
Sure. Peak has passed. There's been so many cycles of. Was there a point that the Jets one time had like 17 wide receivers on their roster in the offseason? And Peak continues to survive, and he's one of these Clemson receivers that was as talented as some of these guys when he came in, had a knee injury, never quite got it all the way back. Real powerful wide receiver. Bellamy could make the team on special teams contributions. Quadri Henderson could make the team as a returner. Giante Burnett could make it as a slot type. And of course, remember, he has that continuity with Sam Darnold going back to USC. Deontay Thompson has that speed. But Greg Dortch is the guy I want to mention here. And there's a lot of people out there, a lot of people I love chopping it up with on Twitter. And great football minds that I like, Still Ryan 5 and Nico Whalen. And there's a lot of people in the Greg Dortch fan club. I know I'm forgetting a few. But he, at Wake Forest, was a player that a lot of people liked his tape. Little, but productive, a lot of fight in his game, just has some juice. If you put his best case forward, you see some Tyler Lockett in his game, and preseason watch list, we want to see him make the team or at least get on the practice squad. There's some people that I respect that say, hey, this is one of the best receivers in the draft, and people will find out soon enough.
It's more fun to talk about him than it is the tight end situation, mainly because Chris Herndon.
Bucky Hodges.
Bucky Hodges. I remember seeing him at the combine and talking to him like, man, I hope he cares. Because that talent, that size is there. But, I mean, how many chances are you going to get? He's probably out of chances. And, well, Chris Herndon had a chance. And certainly one of those, some hot takes, Bloom, get really boring.
Yeah.
When people are like, hey, Chris Herndon, going to be the man. You heard it here first. By the way, the worst, nothing worse than like retweeting yourself. But the worst are the people that are like, you heard it here first. Nobody cares. Just get it right. Work hard, be good, have good information. That's what you should strive for. Nobody cares that I was on the Chris Herndon bandwagon before anybody else. And now I'm getting back to complaining, Bloom.
Yeah. I heard if you retweet yourself too often, you'll go blind. Look, nobody cares who was first. I think people just care. I actually care who's the best at like realizing they're wrong and catching up quickly, because we're all wrong often. Chris Herndon, 4-game suspension. You just can't clog up a roster spot for 4 games at tight end on a guy who maybe will be a low tight end 1, and he showed a lot, but that's just a problem. Trevon Wesco is a Matt Waldman favorite compared to Chris Cooley. He's a guy who has a lot of applications in the offense, including as a blocker. I think that, look, they take him with a 4th-round pick. That means they probably had a second-day grade on him. So some multi-tight end sets there. Speaking of chances, another chance for Ryan Griffin after the Texans cut him. Eric Tomlinson, I think decent blocker. Bucky Hodges, who looks like a big wide receiver and can make some plays at the catch point, but just can't stick on a roster. So lots of different skill sets and histories, and we'll see about these Jets tight ends.
That is a wrap for the New York Jets and the preseason watch list, and that is a wrap for the AFC East. It is 32 teams, 32 episodes, every skill position player that you want to know about. We talk about right here on this show. He's Sigmund Bloom. You follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. I am at Cecil Lammey. The show is at The Audible. We certainly appreciate your time and energy, everyone. Love talking about football and dig the fact that so many of you enjoy it. So for the great Sigmund Bloom, I'm Cecil Lammey saying thanks for watching and listening. Stay tuned. And as always, stay frosty.